Hey, welcome everybody. Welcome. DORR welcomes you. The board of directors welcomes you on this hot day. We've got a full crowd here in the room, and we've got, I don't know how many people that are zooming in today. This is going to be a very interesting and exciting session. We've got some great speakers, as you will find out soon, including our own Secretary of State, who will be here live. He's due to arrive around 10 o'clock. He is driving here from Tucson this morning. And with his schedule, I think it's awesome that he's taking the time to be with us here in person. Yeah, it is great. A few announcements before we get started. My name is Ellen Ferreira. I am the president of Democrats of the Red Rocks. We are working through the summer. We're not canvassing, as you all know, because it's not canvassing weather. However, Diana Christensen and Lama Hayburn, who are over here in the corner, are revitalizing our neighborhood program. That is, if you know your neighbors or want to know your neighbors or want to know more of your neighbors, we will have a program for you to go and speak door to door, become known as a political contact for the people in your neighborhood, so that if they have questions on ballot initiatives or you want them to sign a petition or things like that, you build a rapport and get to know them. So they're working on revitalizing our neighborhood program for the fall. Nobody will be knocking doors this summer, but if you are interested in that, please let them know. In the fall, we will also have a reproductive rights petition that will be circulating statewide. We'll need about 500,000 signatures to get a proposition on the ballot that would amend the Constitution of the state of Arizona to allow for reproductive freedom. So that is coming in the fall. Also, in case you thought there were no elections this fall, no reason to go to the polls, wrong. There will be something, at least one thing on the ballot, and that is called the Sedona Oak Creek School District, M&O, they call it, Maintenance and Operations Budget Override. This is to allow our school district to spend up to 15% more than was allotted in their budget. This is very important. You'll be getting a pamphlet about it sometime in October from the county. Read it. DORR has a comment in there urging people to please support that proposition that will be at the polls in November 7th. It will be a voting day. If you are a DORR member or if you are on the DORR mailing list, want to make you aware of something that should have come out into your mailboxes, your email this week, something that's called Keeping Posted. Raise your hand if you saw our edition of Keeping Posted. Okay, that's great. It should have hit your email boxes this week, and it is a new newsletter that DORR produces monthly, maybe a little less frequently than monthly. It is a single subject newsletter to inform you about a subject. Frequently, it is a subject that is tied into what these breakfasts will be. So the one this month was called Keeping Posted about Election Integrity. And it is written by our fabulous research and writer, Janine Reno, who does a fabulous job with these things. So if you haven't gotten it and would like to see it, our previous issues are about gun violence and reproductive rights. And it gives you the lowdown of what is happening in Arizona and locally on these really, really important issues. So, yeah, let us know if you need or haven't seen a copy of Keeping Posted. In 2023, there were 2023 alone, there were 85 election-related bills introduced in the Arizona State Legislature. Most of them were really, really bad. And thank goodness we have a governor like Katie Hobbs there as a backstop to stop these things and veto them so that they can not go any further. She's doing an amazing job, and we're so pleased that she is where she is. Nothing epitomizes democracy more than the freedom to vote. Free and fair elections, that's what it's all about. And that has been becoming more and more eroded over time. From the inception of this country, there have been people, generally white males, who wanted to keep others from voting. Others being Native Americans and people of color and women. And so in the olden days, they used things like poll taxes and literacy tests and things like that. People have gotten a lot more sophisticated. People that are in power who want to keep others from gaining power. And the best way to do that is to stop them from voting, especially if you know the majority of the people will vote in a different way than you intend. So one thing that's affected all of us most recently is redistricting, gerrymandering. We see where redistricting has gotten us, and it's not good and it's not funny. Republicans are pushing a narrative that voter fraud is rampant. Voter fraud is not rampant. You've got people like Carrie Lake and Abe Hamaday appealing and appealing and appealing their losses to the point where it's almost comical, except it's not funny. You know, they're both still appealing their losses, and it's crazy. In the old days, we would call that being a sore loser. And that's what we got, and that's what we're faced with. So in the past, I would say, I don't know, 6 years, 4 years, the spotlight's been turned on to election officials. And election officials have been vilified, and Arizona has lost election directors or registrars in Yuma County, Cochise, Yavapai, Santa Cruz, and Pinal. In Yavapai, long-term Republican county recorder Leslie Hoffman left her position after a year and a half of harassment and threats from MAGA Republicans. It's a very serious situation because it takes years to learn the election system and to do it right and do it properly. And these people are being hounded out of office. It's just not right. How many of you served as poll watchers or poll observers? Okay. Did you ever feel at the last election or two, did you ever feel slightly intimidated, a little bit uncomfortable? No, I did. I was assigned a 6 a.m. shift in Cottonwood 4 years ago now. And I just thought, you know what? I'm just not feeling comfortable here. And I did go and I did observe. So the observers, did you ever see any hanky-panky? No. I mean, Holly, you've been a judge. Everything is by the books. Everything is documented. Everything is so well thought out and done in order. And to hear the accusations that are being made about what's going on in voting is just crazy. So today we have two guests that have really devoted their careers towards free and fair elections. The first person who's going to speak is Emily Levy. She is with an organization that she founded herself called Scrutineers. If you go to LinkedIn, which I did, Emily is listed as an election protection advocate, which I think is an incredibly powerful and good title. And if it wasn't already taken, I think I would like to take it from her. Election protection advocate. She has spent most of her career working for progressive social change. So she will be with us on Zoom, and then Secretary of State Fontes will be joining us shortly. So Emily, the camera's up here. Welcome to Democrats of the Red Rocks and Sedona and the Verde Valley.
Hey, Emily. There we go.
Thank you so much, Ellen, and thanks to DORR for having me. Thanks to Stephen Hanks for inviting me. I'm really glad to be, I was going to say be here with you, but I'm not quite here with you. I'm at home in California, on the coast where it's foggy. I'll try to send you some fog. I'm sorry, I'm trying to interpret what I'm hearing and I can't tell if I'm not used to doing these hybrid events, so will I be able to, I won't be able to see you in the room. Can I hear the people in the room? Could you all make some noise and see if I can hear you? Seems like not. Okay. Okay, good to know. So I wanted to start out by giving you a little bit of my background.
She can't
I'm
hear
sorry?
us.
She can hear, there's a shadow of something. She can.
Okay, Emily, if you can hear, just proceed.
Okay, okay. Partly was just wanting to, it's kind of a funny thing to be doing this hybrid model is new to me. And I wanted to know if there's silence, if it's just because there's not a microphone or because what I'm saying isn't landing or what. So we'll just go with it and assume that folks are following along. So I wanted to start by sharing a little bit with you about my background for context. So I call myself a lifelong activist. The first protest I remember going to was when I was 5 years old with my mother. The first protest I remember organizing was when I was in 3rd grade and started a petition drive for girls to be allowed to wear pants to school. So my mother really taught me how to advocate for myself and those around me, and I'm forever grateful to her for that. And I've worked on a lot of different issues throughout my life. Women's rights, gay rights, stopping US intervention in all the places the US has been intervening, or some of them that I've worked on, anti-nuclear power, anti-nuclear weapons, anti-racism, all kinds of things. And as I became an adult and in my early adulthood, I was really kind of stuck about how do I figure out what to focus on? And I kind of did a little of everything, whatever was the biggest issue in the news or there were protests about, I would get involved. And so I was very much a generalist in that way. And I saw people around me who were doing powerful work, having really chosen an issue to work on. And I cared about so many things that I didn't see how I would ever be able to choose one issue to focus on and develop expertise in. And then in 2004, as the election approached, I signed up with Move On to go to, I think it was Washington State, I said I would go to help get out the vote. And I never heard back from them. And so I waited and waited to hear from them. And then a friend said to me, I'm going to work with this new group called the Election Protection Coalition. I'm going to New Mexico, where we're going to be working to make sure that everybody who shows up to vote gets to vote. Because we know, she said, that more people are going to attempt to vote for Kerry. This was the second Bush campaign when he was running against John Kerry. I won't say re-election since he wasn't elected in the first time. And she said, but we just don't know. We know that more people are going to show up to vote for John Kerry, but we don't know if they'll be able to vote. And this organization is trying to make sure that folks get to vote. So I decided to go with her. We went to Albuquerque, showed up there a few days before the election, I think maybe Thursday or Friday before the election. And this was in 2004. And the Election Protection Coalition was running for I believe the first time, the hotline that you might know as the 866 Our Vote hotline, where people can report problems that they encounter when they're trying to vote. And my job was to enter the phones and to enter people's reports into the computer system. So I was hearing all kinds of stories about people being turned away at the polls, and it was very concerning to me. We left their election, well, on election night, it really looked like Kerry was winning, and then things went the other way. And I know that I remember being on the plane on the way home, and a lot of the people that were on the plane were volunteers, and everybody just looked shell-shocked. And people were saying that we felt like the election had been stolen. And that seems like a funny thing to say now, especially, you know, post 2020, but it just felt wrong somehow. And at the time, because of what happened in Florida in 2000, and there was an alert system that people could sign up for. If we think there's hanky-panky with the election, we'll all go out and protest. And I had signed up for that alert system, and maybe some of you had too, but the alert was never called. The people in charge of it didn't have enough information about what was questionable about that election to call people out into the streets to protest. So after that election, I really wanted to do something, but I had no idea what to do or how. And a friend called me and said, I just heard this interview on the radio with a guy who is looking into what happened in Ohio in the presidential election. And as you might remember, Ohio was the last state to report, and whichever way its electoral votes went, that was going to be the way the presidency went. And there were a lot of fishy things that happened there. So this guy, whose name is Richard Hayes Phillips, was doing a statistical analysis at the precinct level of the entire state of Ohio to try to figure out what happened. She said he talked about it on the radio, and you know, it sounds like he's doing it by himself. Maybe he could use some help. And I thought, well, he's this big muckety-muck guy. I'm never going to hear from him, but I listened to the interview, and he gave his email address. So I emailed him, and I thought nothing would come of it. And about a half an hour later, he called me and said, yes, I definitely need help. He didn't know who it was. And the reason I like to tell this story is because this friend who called me and said she heard this interview on the radio is quite severely disabled. And really, you know, before her disabilities, she was an activist, and she feels a lot like she's not able to do things that will matter now. And that one phone call to me set off what's now nearly 20 years of my work in this field. So you never know what difference you're going to make when you connect people and resources. So I ended up pulling together a team of, I think we had about 15 or 20 people to work with Richard Hayes Phillips to do this investigation. Excuse me, my dog is barking. I apologize for this. I was planning to be in my office with the door closed and the internet wouldn't cooperate there.
We don't hear it, Emily.
You don't hear it?
No.
Great. Okay. So let's good. I'm so glad. Okay. So we did all the, I didn't know very much about elections. I certainly didn't know about statistics, but I'm a mom and I've been an activist all my life, and I kind of know how to put a project together. So we found people, figured out what their strengths were, put them to work in different ways to help him with this investigation. He did all the analysis. It's since become a book called, do I have the name in my mind? Witness to a Crime, a Citizen's Audit of an American Election. And Richard Hayes Phillips is his name. And through that process, I learned a ton about our elections and about how since 2000, states were really pushed to move to electronic systems where computers that are owned by private corporations and that don't reveal the source code of their software count our votes in secret. And most of these the companies are very closely tied to the Republican Party, and that basically it's a giant black box where our votes go in and results come out, and we don't get to see how those things are related to each other. And it really concerned me and set me off on what's now been almost a 20-year journey of trying to of advocating for elections that are more secure and more transparent, so we can tell that everyone's voice is heard in an election. Now, this, as you might imagine, has gotten to be more confusing and complicated work since 2020, when all of a sudden we have the MAGA faction of the Republican Party saying that the election was stolen, an election that, as far as my colleagues and I can tell, was not stolen. However, and I think, you know, most of what they're saying is garbage or worse. And they have one thing right. And that thing is that our election system is not transparent and that people cannot tell simply by looking at the election results whether our votes were counted fairly or not. And that is really concerning. And I think that could present us an opportunity right now that we've got people on the left and some people on the left and some people on the right, both saying the same thing, that we need elections where people can tell that our votes were counted fairly. That could mean, you know, that could put us in a situation where we can actually get change to be made. But what I see happening instead is that people, particularly in the Democratic Party, are doubling down on our elections are safe, everything's fine. And so we've got the Republicans saying we can't trust elections at all. And Democrats could be responding to that by saying, why can't we trust them? Because they're not transparent. Great, let's make them more transparent so that everybody can see that they're fair. But instead, I see this knee-jerk reaction of, if the Republicans are saying there's a problem, Democrats are, as a whole, generalizing here, are going to say, no, everything's fine, be quiet, go away. And I think that's really unfortunate. And I know that I may be stirring up some stuff in the room by saying this. And I think it's important for us to really talk about it. So I want to move into talking a little bit about scrutineers and what we do. So in the intervening time between 2004 and 2020, I worked on investigations of elections and lawsuits and advocacy projects in a number of states around the country, including in Arizona. And I can talk a little bit about that specifically later. And then as the 2020 election cycle began, I asked myself, what needs to happen that isn't happening that I might be able to have an impact on? And what I realized was a few things. One was that people who were newly interested in election security, which a lot of people were because of the Mueller report, didn't have anywhere to go to learn the basics about what are these voting systems that we're using and what are the problems with them? What are the differences between them? If my community is buying a new system, how can I figure out which is the best choice and push for them to purchase that one? Or, you know, who are the other groups that are working on these issues? There was no kind of central place for people to go and learn that stuff. The second thing was that over the past 20 years or so, or 16 years at that point, a number of small groups had sprung up around the country to work on election security and transparency issues. We generally called ourselves election integrity groups. That phrase I am not using anymore because it's been thoroughly hijacked by the right. And I also learned that it really has a racist history that I wasn't aware of. So these small groups had come up with ways, even though our votes are counted inside computers that we can't see inside of, these small groups had come up with ways of providing some public oversight to the elections, but they were really little groups and they didn't have the people power to push out those solutions across the country. And then the third thing was that the voting rights movement, which I consider myself to be a part of, in general, focuses on making sure that people get to vote and not on what happens to those votes after they're cast. And then this little election transparency movement was focusing only on what happens to the votes after they're cast and ignoring, for the most part, how racism plays into voter suppression and how that's a huge part of the picture of what's wrong with our elections too. So I know that these two groups of people need each other. You know, it doesn't matter if everybody can vote if the votes aren't counted fairly, and it doesn't matter if the votes are counted fairly or if people are denied the right to vote. And so I really wanted to bring together those two parts of the voting rights movement to work together. So I started Scrutineers in January of 2020. We've got a little over 1,000 members. And we have, how we only exist online. Well, I mean, I'm actually a human being sitting in my living room. I'm not AI generated or anything. But as an organization, we exist online. We have an interactive membership site that's kind of functions like a social media site where people can make posts and respond to each other. We publicize our events inside there. We have all kinds of trainings and a library of past trainings. And we have small groups that work on individual projects. One of the main projects that we've been doing is what we call the AFTER project, Act for Trusted Election Results, where we're training people around the country not to observe at the polls, which I heard that some of you do, but to observe the processing and counting of votes. Because mistakes are made, and sometimes whatever you call a mistake that's made on purpose happens. Sometimes there are people who are nefarious, who are monkeying with the votes. And it's really important that fair-minded people who are interested in the elections being run fairly are there to observe. Sometimes observers can catch errors that make a really big difference. My favorite story about that is in the 2016 primary in California. There were some observers in Los Angeles County, and in California, the Democratic Party allows independent voters to vote in the Democratic primary, but they don't get a regular Democratic ballot because that's got things like party officers and stuff like that on the ballot. So they have to have the special ballot that's just the nonpartisan races plus the presidential primary. And the ballots were, it's a complicated system, and the workers who were probably temps hired for the elections didn't really understand it, and were processing the ballots in a way that wasn't counting these crossover voters, as they're called, votes for president. And the observers noticed this and called it to the attention of the supervisor, who agreed that a mistake had been made and corrected it, went back over the ballots that had been processed incorrectly. And as a result, I believe the number is of votes that wouldn't have been counted, votes for president that wouldn't have been counted, that got counted because of the observers noticing that problem, was a little over 65,000 votes in one count. So it can really make a big difference to be there. And one of the things we do is train groups and individuals about what to look for when they go do that observation. So I want to tell you, we've got, I'll answer any questions you have, and I want to share with you that you're invited to join Scrutineers if you'd like. We have a very steep membership fee. I should warn you, it's a one-time fee of $1.99. The reason we do that is just to keep bots out of the site. And you can find us at scrutineers.org. We have a film series coming up in August. On Friday evenings, we're going to be showing 4 different films that have been made over the last 20 years or so about the problems with our voting systems. And those 3 of them are already posted on our site. The 4th will be posted there later today. You don't have to be a member to come watch the films with us on Friday evenings. They'll be early. They'll be for those of us in the Pacific and Arizona time zones. We'll start at 5 in the evening on Fridays in August. So I want to invite you to do that and to come check us out. Check out what we're doing. The observer training that I mentioned is also available on the public site without joining. But joining gives you access to interact with other members, meet folks, come to other trainings. We'll be having some speakers and discussions after the films that will be just for members. And I think that's about it. I look forward to hearing what you all think of what I'm talking about and what your questions are. And I want to make sure when Secretary Fontes joins us, that we talk about one of the bills that Katie Hobbs has recently vetoed that both Secretary Fontes and I actually support. So I want to make sure we get into that, even if it's a little bit fiery. Thank you all again, and I look forward to your questions.
Okay, thank you so much, Emily. I see that Secretary Fontes is in the room. So I think rather than taking questions for Emily now, we will let the secretary come up and join us, and then we will take questions for all of them once he is finished. So, Secretary, if you would please come. Thank you so much. I cannot think of a better person to be in the position that you are in than you right now.
Yes, this chair is perfect.
That's exactly what I was talking about. Secretary is a product of Southern Arizona, a Nogales boy. His family has lived in Southern Arizona for 300 years, which is a really, really long time. He served as a Marine from 1992 to 1996, and he taught marksmanship there. And you probably don't know this, but we had a breakfast several months ago that was devoted to gun violence. And Steve Hanks had us watch a video of you that you made when you were running prior to being elected, about the rigorous training that Marines have to go through to handle the kinds of guns that an 18-year-old can now just purchase on the street. The Marines have a binder like this, a 2-week course that they need to take every single year to refresh themselves on how to operate this kind of equipment. And any 18-year-old can go in and buy that same exact gun. So that's kind of distressing. The secretary got his law degree. He became a prosecutor. In 2020, he defeated a 28-year incumbent to become Maricopa County Recorder. The first Democrat in 50 years to hold that seat, if I'm not mistaken. Wow. So thank goodness he was elected Secretary of State in 2022 by defeating yet another sore loser. Your state is full of them. Did it plus. Now he's responsible for helping set statewide election policies and training local election officials. Thank you for making the trip up here. We appreciate it.
A couple seats up here if anybody in the back wants to sit back and relax. Yes, I am your Secretary of State, thank goodness. While I actually did grow up on a ranch in Southern Arizona, I don't have to wear a cowboy hat to prove anything. So I'd love to chat with you really briefly about some of the work that we've been engaged in at the Secretary of State's office, some of the really important changes that we've made, and some of the things we're doing moving forward that are going to impact our elections, and then just a little bit about what you can do to really help Arizona and help advance the interests of democracy moving forward for the next several generations, because it's going to take everybody pulling together, particularly Democrats, because we can't always count on our friends on the other side of the aisle to make rational decisions about how to run government, at least not as a whole. Some of them are still okay. When I took office, I found a similar situation to what I found at the Maricopa County Recorder's office when I took office in 2016. It was underfunded. It had been starved of resources for a long time. It just wasn't capable of executing the work that it should have been executing. Now, that's not to disparage any of the prior secretaries, but it just didn't have the resources needed to do the stuff that we needed to do. We were still researching a lot of what we need to research in the business services section, for example, on microfiche. Which, yeah, wow. It still exists. You're like, we abandoned that a long time ago. Yeah. Our libraries and archives, the Libraries, Archives and Public Records Division has really needed some updating of the facilities. The building that they're in now is about 20 years late in coming, and so we're going to need to update that. We made some asks there. Our security circumstances were really bad. The entire 7th floor is still running on Cat5 cable, which is, anybody that knows anything about technology knows that that's not great at this stage of the game. And we still have some of those sort of infrastructure issues that we're dealing with. But one of the things that we really needed to do was update our security circumstances as far as the information technology goes internally. And we needed to do it really quickly because, as you all know, it went from 11 in just the last couple of months to 12 of our 15 counties have lost a senior election officer, either a county recorder or an election director, just since 2020. Okay, 12 out of 15 have lost some amount of an enormous amount of institutional knowledge. In fact, a couple of the most senior county recorders in Arizona are in Maricopa County, Stephen Richer, who beat me in my reelection bid in 2020, and Gabriela Cáceres Kelly in Pima County, and they just got elected. The most senior one serving right now is in Coconino County, Patty Hansen, and she's going to be retiring at the end of her term here. I think she's got a little small corner of Sedona up in Coconino County up there. So that's important to know. So we also, when we started out, the building of that budget that we were looking for so that we could help our business services, our libraries and archives, and our election infrastructure really was about getting the folks we needed to train to make sure that we've got updated systems, to make sure that everybody's working well. We were asking for an attorney and a paralegal because county attorney offices across Arizona, they're not equipped for this stuff. They don't do elections all the time. And you really need a high level of expertise when you're going up against the Snell and Wilmers and all of these, big law firms down in Phoenix. We lovingly call them Sniff and Whimper sometimes. Especially because I'm good friends with some of the lawyers there. So what we wanted to do was do what the Secretary of State's office is supposed to do for Arizona's election community. We wanted it to become that rich resource, right? Because Arizona's elections are run at the county level. The Secretary of State does not run Arizona's elections. We're sort of like the commissioner's office of the NFL, right? There's a bunch of teams out there that play the game. They're the ones that field the teams. They're the ones that pick the color. They call the plays. We set the rules. We make sure that they're all playing by the same rule book. And we make sure that the field is level, right? We make sure that all of that stuff's good to go. They're the ones that do the work, right? We don't handle any ballots at the Secretary of State's office. We don't actually purchase any of the tabulation equipment. We don't do any of that stuff. We set standards by which those are measured, both the machinery and the humans, right? Because we also certify election officials. To get that certified election official, you got to go through our office and our training. So we wanted to make sure that we were doing the regulating and we were equipped to do the regulating and the assistance, right? Well, unfortunately, we didn't get the budget that we were asking for. We didn't get anything that we were asking for. Neither did the Attorney General, by the way. And so neither one of us was very happy with what was going on, either on the 9th floor or the legislature. And the only reason that we actually ended up at the Secretary's office getting some money is because former Secretary of State Ken Bennett and I have a great relationship. And out of his bucket of pork, he decided Arizona's elections were going to be a little bit of a pork project for him. Thank goodness, right, for Ken Bennett and his good graces. We got a couple of $1 million out of what he could have just given to any old project. For example, the $15 million that got sent to the rodeo in Prescott.
Yeah.
I was asking for 4.8. I didn't get any of it. So, and my ask and the Attorney General's ask would have been paid for by that rodeo, by the way.
Yeah.
All of our asks. So when folks are talking about, how did the budget go?
That's scary.
Yeah, when the Department of Law and the Department of State don't get any of the money they're asking for, that's a problem. So anyway, what do we do to ameliorate this? Well, from the beginning, I knew we weren't going to be in a very, very friendly environment, particularly when it comes to the budget. We were hoping for the backstop up on the 9th floor to help take care of us. And the governor's office just couldn't come through. Whoever they had negotiating just didn't end up doing the job. And so what we ended up having to do was lean on Plan B. And what was Plan B? Plan B was putting together the single best Secretary of State staff you could imagine. We've got more experience in my office now in actual election administration across large, medium, and small counties than any administration has ever had at the Department of State in Arizona. And we are hugely glad. These are all mid to late career professionals. These are people who are not going to be distracted by shiny objects. They're not going to be involved in palace intrigue. They're not going to care about the politics down at the legislature. They're just going to focus on getting the county's work done. Who are these people? Well, one of them is Lisa Mara. Remember Lisa Mara? She got sued by the Cochise County Board of Supervisors when she wouldn't break the law like they told her to break the law. And she's a Republican, pretty staunch Republican. Our sidebar discussions are pretty interesting sometimes, but she's an absolute professional with great honor and integrity. And she's been in the election administration business for a few decades. We've got Tonya Tennell, who after leaving the county recorder's office, she was my state and federal compliance officer there, having been there a long time and having been with the Arizona Association of County Officials before that, she went to run for Runback Election Services, the folks who print all of Arizona's ballots. And now she's back at the Secretary of State's office with that external experience. My chief of staff, Keely Varvel, very experienced public administrator. She was my chief of staff at the county recorder's office and then went to work for the city of Tempe for 2 years till I brought her back into the Secretary of State's office. Your new state election director, Colleen Connor, who is writing the elections procedures manual, which we'll talk about. She was the first executive director of the Clean Elections Commission and then worked for about 20 plus years at the Maricopa County Attorney's Office, representing every county in Arizona on both sides of the courtroom at some point in time in trial and appellate courts. She's the single most experienced election lawyer in the state of Arizona. She's not your state election director. So along with these folks, there are several others who make up the bulk of that experienced team. So do we have the resources that we need insofar as the extra trainers and some of the extra dollars and cents resources? No, but we do have the people, and they're going to be the ones that actually make all of this happen for our counties. And they're doing a pretty darn good job, even though they're all working a hell of a lot harder than they ought to. But we're going to make things happen well. Now, what are some of the things that we're actually doing to take care of this? Well, the most important one, and the one that people are talking about a lot, and you'll hear a lot more about it, is the Elections Procedures Manual. Now, what is the Elections Procedures Manual? It's the rule book for the counties. Each county has to follow the same set of rules. The procedures manual is that rule book. Well, why is this a controversial thing? Why is it a big deal? Well, it didn't used to be a big deal. All the way through the Bennett administration, 2014 was the last time we had a regular rule book. It was just that. It was a rule book that reflected the statutes. It clarified some of the things in the statutes and had the force and effect of law. When Secretary Reagan took over the office, however, her election director by the name of Eric Spencer, who's a colleague of mine in the law, he works at Sniff and Whimper, by the way. We can be serious and still have a little bit of added a whole bunch of stuff in there. Added tons and tons of footnotes and quoting of statutes and all this extraneous stuff in there. And look, if you're an election professional, or if you're just coming in for a few months to work, you need to be able to comprehend what is in that book, because that's how you're going to do the work of serving those voters. And if it's chock full of this legalese because some lawyer thought he was billing by the word when he wrote it, that's going to be a problem for you as a county election official. And so we were really upset with that when it started happening. It never got fully published. It never got fully approved under the Reagan administration. Comes the Hobbs administration, and the pendulum swings all the way over to the other political side. And her election director did a lot of the same stuff, added a lot of things in there that were not in the law and they got sued. They never actually had a fully enforced, fully authorized rules book. And even that was scrutinized by the Supreme Court. And one of the things the Supreme Court said, which was very troubling to me, was that one of the pieces that got challenged, the Supreme Court said, no, this piece does not have the force and effect of law. Now think of what that meant. Why is that important? If one piece does not have the force and effect of law, does this piece over here have the force? Do I have to do this? Do I have to do this over here? Do I have to do this over here? So when the entire rule book now is called into question, because now you're dealing with opinion, political opinion, regardless of whether it comes from the left or the right. Now you have the potential for inconsistent election administration across the state, and that's bad. That doesn't ensure that all of the voters are going to get treated the same. Whether you like the way they're being treated or not, at the end of the day, what we need is that level playing field. Now, we can increase the length of the grass or decrease the length of the grass over time through the legislative process. But consistency is incredibly important for all of Arizona's counties. And that consistency goes away when you inject a whole bunch of opinion into something that is supposed to have, again, the force and effect of law. So we scrapped the whole thing and we went back to 2014 because that was the last time we had 2014. Think about how long ago that was. The last time we had a fully authorized manual. Then we went into 2015 session law, brought any changes in. 2016 session law, brought in the changes. And once we had that draft, we released piece by piece in 5 different sections over the last 5 months to the counties so they could review it. And what have they been doing? Reviewing it. And guess what? We did it that way because in the past, the Secretary's office would hand the counties about this time of year 300 or 400 or 500 pages worth of new manual, and they'd say, here, review it, get back to us in a week.
Not gonna happen.
Now, if you're in Apache County and you're the county recorder and you've got 2 employees in your office, you got to do your all of the rest of the work that you're doing. It's not like everybody's Maricopa County with teams of lawyers and all the money in the world to be able to do that sort of thing. It's just not fair for the counties. My job isn't to do anything that's going to harm them. I'm supposed to help them. So we split it up in chunks. We did it a piece at a time. The last chunk went out on the first Tuesday of this month. It's out for review. It's going to come back. Then we're going to put it out for public comment. But here's the fun part about that. That's not required by statute.
Yikes.
We're putting it out for public comment because we want to make sure that the public is involved in this process. Now, are we opening up a can of worms? You betcha. You betcha. And are we going to take all of the comments into consideration? Absolutely we are. And because sometimes people have good ideas, right? And we're not perfect. Sometimes we miss things. We're going to have the draft to the final draft to the governor and the attorney general with enough time to be, I think we're going to be a month ahead of time when we get that to them. So that's super exciting. Some of the other things we've done is we've increased the level of scrutiny that new election equipment receives in Arizona. So for example, ES&S, Election Services, Systems and Services, and Dominion. They're both 2 of the biggest vendors in Arizona for these systems. Some states don't have any certification process. They'll just take them off the shelf and they'll use them. Some states have their own state certification. Some states only use the federal certification. We do both in Arizona. We have some of the most rigorous standards that exist in the United States. And we just, under my administration, increased the state certification standards and included political observers in the process during the committee's testing of the equipment and the software. So both of those systems had updates. We invited the Republicans and the Democrats, and I think we invited the Libertarians as well, to come and sit in while the committee was actually doing the testing on the new software systems themselves in our office. Why did we do that? Transparency. Same thing that nice lady was talking about, right? We got to have transparency in our systems. And that's something that we've definitely built more into our systems. So moving forward, what we need is folks like you to do the things that she was suggesting. particularly as Democrats. We need you to be those poll observers. We need you to be those folks who are watching when they're doing the tabulation, when they're doing signature verification. We need you for two reasons. First and foremost, again, we want to make sure that the systems are transparent and the public has eyes and ears, and you can be those eyes and ears. And number two, we've got to keep an eye on our friends on the other side of the aisle, right? You know, I think your new county recorder here, Michelle Burchell, is a phenomenal public servant. I think she's really, really good. One of the things that I was worried about was when she first came in, she was a little bit on the, you know, on the election enthusiast side of things. But one of the reasons I like her so much is because she's come around, completely come around. And now she's more mad at the election enthusiasts than Leslie Hoffman was when she left. And Leslie didn't like that stuff at all. You guys know her, right? Your old county recorder here. So I think you guys are in pretty good hands here in Yavapai County, Coconino County area. Things are not terrible. But as Democrats, I want you to consider one other thing. Arizona is a battleground because we made it into a battleground. It didn't just happen, right? We put in a ton of work all over the state, right? And a lot of the attention obviously goes to Maricopa County. That's where 62% of our voters live. And sure, that makes sense. But you can have a significant impact here, especially when we make sure to run Democrats for every single available office. I don't buy the one-shot complacency that the Democratic Party has employed for some time. Let me tell you why I don't buy that. I don't buy it because had we run more than one in several of those legislative districts this past year, we may very well have won them. But we ensured that we couldn't get that second House seat by only running one candidate, right? Now, when people say, oh, it's going to dilute the vote. When you've got oath keepers and anti-Semites running at the top of the Republican ticket, people are going to run away from that and they're going to need somewhere to go, Democrats.
Yes.
Our voters need a county treasurer candidate. Our voters need county recorder candidates, sheriff's candidates, assessor candidates. We need candidates for clerk of the court. We need candidates in our justice of the peace, in all of these offices. Think about the feeling you get when you get that ballot and you see an office and there's only a Republican to vote for.
Yeah.
And don't tell me that doesn't happen. Oh, I know it happens all the time. So why aren't you running?
Good question.
Yeah, you're darn right. It's a good question. You're darn right. It's a good question.
Because we're too old.
Please look at the average age in here. You're not too old. For this community, this is where you're at. Yeah. What's the alternative? The only thing that your voters get to vote for is someone they don't want to vote for. And some people feel duty bound to vote for every office because they feel like that's what they're supposed to do. So guess who's going to get more votes? You don't give your voters a choice. You're giving the other side an advantage, a significant advantage. So why aren't you running? You're here today. You care enough to listen to, I can't remember, what was her name? Emily. You care enough to listen to Emily and this nonsense. And you guys run for something, for God's sakes. Put your name on the ballot. Because the cumulative impact of multiple candidacies in your neighborhoods for these offices has a significant up-ticket impact. It moves up. And every county office is going to be on the ballot this fall. Every county office is going to be on the ballot this fall. I think you even elect judges here, right? Are there any lawyers in here? Run for judge. Run for Superior Court judge. I'm not even kidding.
We also have county attorney.
We have county attorney. Run for county attorney.
You don't have to be a lawyer to run for judge here.
For justice of the peace, you don't. For Superior Court judge, you do. Yes. So, yeah, if you want to run for justice of the peace, heck, justices of the peace, it's a pretty good gig. I mean, Michelle Reagan is not an attorney. She was Secretary of State. She's a justice of the peace now. She hangs out, wears a robe, goes and drinks some red wine on the weekends, you know? Look, what I'm saying is this is your democracy. And you care enough to be here, Democrats. You care enough to invest your time and your energy here. Why don't you just put your name on the ballot? Oh, I don't want people finding out about this. I don't want people knowing about that. I'm too private. I'm too this. I'm too that. Y'all, in 2018, my ex-wife at the time called me up and she said, "Hey, were you expecting a package?" And I said, "No, why?" And she says, "Because one of the kids just brought one in and put it on the kitchen counter." Yeah, yikes. And I said, "Get him out of the house right now. Go to your mom's." And when I got to the house and the bomb squad had already cleared not only my house, but every house adjacent and around my house, I determined at that moment that I was going to keep fighting. And I was going to keep pushing. Just like these sons of bitches that went up against our national capital with their rifles, that made me more determined to get back in the game when I had just lost a re-election bid. Just a month and a half, 2 months before that. This democracy is worth fighting for. And if you really believe that, if that story that I just told you puts a little something in your gut, and that feeling of disgust came back to you when you recall the screaming and yelling and pounding of doors and knocking out of windows at our nation's capital, in our house, then run for something. Because you do care and you do matter just as much as this democracy matters. And if for whatever reason you're not going to run, okay, fine. I'll be upset with you, but that's okay. We'll get over it. Get over it. But you need to be engaged in a significant way. Much more than sitting and listening to people make political platitudes and talk about systems and all kinds of fun stuff. You need to be out there knocking on the doors, like some of you do. You need to be writing those checks to those candidates, like the candidates that are going to emerge out of today. You need to be on the phone. You need to be on the phones talking to people. You need to be writing those postcards. You need to be out there doing the work of democracy, because this democracy is wobbling. Think about this for 1 second. Only 17,000 votes separated us from Governor Carrie Lake.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
Only 280 votes separated us from Attorney General Hamadeh. I won by 120,000, so I was okay. But you get what I'm saying here. There's a lot of work that can be done. And again, you fill those down ballot spaces. And then just think about this. Imagine this for a second, okay? I want you to imagine this for a second. Imagine that you decide to run for office, just for fun, okay? Think about the campaign you're going to put together. Think about your friends and family that are going to get excited and they're going to get behind you, because I'll guarantee you they will. I guarantee you people will get excited and get behind you. Those are folks that may not have been as energized, but for the fact that you decided to get in. But for the fact that you decided that your democracy was important enough and that public service really meant something. Now think of the impact that they're going to have, not just to help you get elected, whether or not you win, but the impact that's going to have on Democrats writ large across the entire spectrum. And if we mount candidates in every office, for every office, we have that many more campaigns of people who may not have been involved and may not have paid that much attention to the political process, but for the fact that their friend or their neighbor is running. You see, democracy is about addition. The Democratic Party is about bringing more and more and more people in. And if we don't put ourselves out there, if we don't become those kids, I've got neighbors who never voted. I've got family members who never voted before I started running for office. And once I started running, not only did they get involved, they started writing checks. And not just to me, but to other Democrats. And they started understanding the process. And you don't have to be wealthy. You don't have to have all of the time in the world. You don't need all of that stuff. You need guts and some bodies to help you out. That's what this democracy has always been built on. And you can make that happen. But you got to put yourselves out there. Now, there's one other thing I wanted to chat about that isn't like all hellfire and brimstone. It's what was mentioned over here a minute ago. So run for something. Okay, that's part of the message. The notion of transparency in our elections. Now, respectfully, we in election administration do lots of testing. We have lots of certifications. We have all kinds of rigor that we put our systems through. So with respect to folks who've been in the black box voting community, I met them when I first came into office, way pre-2020. Good people. Do we need more transparency? 100% we do. Okay. But should we come in with skepticism to get that transparency? I don't think so. I think the skepticism is opposite side of the same coin as election denialism. It drives us away from one another, where I think we should have faith in our fellow citizens, that civic faith that goes along with the folks who take the oath and they do that stuff. Okay. Just because you don't see it doesn't mean that it's not happening. Right? How many of you have eaten in a restaurant in the last week and a half, 2 weeks? Right? How many of you inspected the kitchen before you ate your meal?
Yeah.
I'm not like, that's not an outrageous question. Right? None of you. Why? Because you have faith. You have faith that you're going to get served good, reasonable. I didn't say good. It depends on the restaurant. Right? Clean food, healthy food, something that at least isn't going to make you sick. Right? When you're driving down the road, and so, well, that's a bad example. Go ahead. But even yes, when you're on the freeway, do you like know what the mental state is of every single person that's on the road with you? No, we call them crazy because it's fun, but look, you're calling me crazy, I'm calling you crazy because we're on the same highway. But the bottom line is this: we're on the highways going 70+ miles an hour, and we trust one another. Follow rules. We trust one another. And we may drive with a little caution, but we're still doing it. Right? How many of you inspect the airplane that you got on? How many of you know how to fly an airplane? There's one. Yeah, there's always one. Especially up here, there's always one. Faith is what they want to erase.
Yeah.
The election deniers want us to mistrust one another as citizens. They want us divided away from one another. And so with respect to my friends in the black box community, I don't come at we need more transparency from a space of suspicion. I come at it from a space of good governance. It's just better practice for folks to know more. And to that end, the bill she was talking about, the ballot images bill, which has just been endorsed by the Pima County Democratic Party, right? It has my endorsement. It has Ken Bennett's endorsement, former secretary. What we're doing is saying, publish the ballots. Just take the image of the ballots, which every system in Arizona is capable of taking an image of the ballots, and just put them online. Yeah, pretty simple. And then there's some people out there who are saying, no, you don't want to do that. Why, I say? And they say, because everybody's going to do their own little audit. Good. You get to go look in the kitchen. You get to know how to inspect the airplane. Go count it yourself. If that's what it takes to rebuild some of the civic faith that has been purposefully eroded by the enemies of democracy, okay. But I thought this was a good idea before those SOBs were doing their stuff. Right? Back in 2017, I was talking to exactly these folks and I said, well, I don't know that your motive is where my motive is, but the outcome I think is good. Let's publish those ballot images. Let's get them out there. And people say, well, what if somebody signs their ballot? Well, that's their choice, right? Some people jaywalk. Some people have interesting fashion choices.
who are we to be so patronizing to the voters to say, oh, no. You're all too dumb to know that if you sign your ballot, somebody might see who you voted for. The fact that your vote is private, you own it and you can give it up, right? Sometimes people ask, well, who'd you vote for? Well, I don't tell people who I voted for because it's my choice, but you can. There's no law against it. Right? Yeah. A lot of times you see it on the internet, people take photos of their ballots and they'll post them online. It's not like there's nothing secret about the vote on the ballot. What is secret is your identity as detached from that ballot. Right? So I'm still looking for someone to give me a really good reason why this is a bad idea. It's not a bad idea. It's a great idea. Yes.
Could you explain what would be online? What would people see? Would
Yeah.
people see who you voted for?
No, because, yeah, so great question. Would people see who you voted for? The answer is no. Because again, the detachment, okay? If you vote if you vote by mail, you send your ballot in, it's in an envelope, right? They do the signature verification and they pull the ballot out of the envelope and they drop it over there in that pile, right? If you're voting in person, some counties have tabulators on site. You drop it right in the tabulator and it counts them on site. Some counties collect them all and they take them back to tabulate. In any event, the identity of the voter is separated from the physical ballot itself. So then you got this big stack of ballots, you run them through the tabulators and you get your results. But they're not connected to the voter. That's already been disconnected over here. Then what they'll do is they'll pull these ballots and they'll separate them by precinct. And they'll show precinct A, here's all the ballot images, bing, 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 online. It'll be horrific to try to go through that. I wouldn't want to do it. You wouldn't either, right? Precinct B, here's the images, online. Count them if you want. You don't have to count them if you don't want. You know, there's a place on planet Earth that does it. They print their ballot images or publish the ballot images online. They've been doing it for a long time. They have a 98% confidence in their space on the outcome of their elections. It's Mongolia.
People.
What about privacy? In other words, if you're publishing something and if there's a signature, like my signature, you have, oh, you
You
don't.
don't sign the ballot.
Oh,
You
you
sign the ballot envelope. You can't publish the envelopes. That's already against the law. Talking about the ballot.
Just ballot.
But, Susan,
Yes.
if you write yourself in for governor, right, then you're making a choice.
Yeah.
Right? If you write in like Captain America and then Mickey Mouse and you go through the whole cabinet, right? And Goofy and Donald Duck and all that stuff, which by the way, we've seen the Avengers came through one time. My favorite one was one where somebody did like all the songs from Abbey Road. I mean, it is what it is, right?
Veto letters then.
But what did the veto letter say? The veto letter said no. I don't remember the specifics, but there was, the bill had two parts to it. The first part was what I'm talking about, and the second part was a list, voter list that would have been published. The hook on that is, I don't know that the governor and some of the folks that were advising her liked that part, the first part of the bill, because that information is already available to the public. And they didn't want more easier access to that information, even though it's already publicly available. Does that make sense? So instead of
what you said, but it doesn't make.
yeah, so instead of you going to the county recorder's office and saying, give me a list of all of the voters and doing the public records request and paying, I don't know, in Yavapai County, it would be $75, $80, $100, whatever. You would just put it all online. So they didn't want all of the personal identifying information and all that stuff online, which makes sense. Fine. Again, for me, the information's already out there. So it's not like you're putting new information out there. You're just making it easier for people to get. So that was I think that was the biggest hook. And it still might come up. There was a motion for reconsideration on the bill. We're in the zombie legislative session that we're in right now. Is it dead yet? We're not sure. So that was kind of in what it said. Yes, sir.
First of all, thanks for coming today. It's great having you here.
Happy to be here.
So to pick up on your riff on running for office.
Yeah.
What I'm already deathly afraid of is that because of the redistricting before the 2022 elections,
Mhm.
we ended up with Eli Crane as our congressman.
Mhm.
Oh, God.
What I'm concerned about is not only that it may be 10 years until the census is taken and there's another redistricting meeting, but that people are going to assume that this is now a red district and there won't be anybody on the Democratic side trying to challenge him. What is your feeling about that? And do you think that it's possible for a Democrat to win this district at this point, given the atmosphere?
Well, I think the DCCC, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, screwed up both in Tom's district and down in the southeastern Arizona district as well. I don't think they invested. And we could have taken those. Frankly, we probably could have gotten rid of Schweikert too.
Yeah.
Okay. Number one, so that's from the top. Number two, I think there was a little bit of disconnect at the state party in this last cycle, and Democrats made the same mistakes that Democrats make all the time. We focused completely on the top race, the Senate race,
Right.
and then almost completely on the governor's race. And all the rest of it, including sadly the congressional races, didn't get the attention they deserve. Okay. Number three, I think the campaigns themselves were a little wobbly. That's just, me saying, being the political, I've got my political hat on right now.
Right.
But again, when I going back to the question, like, because it fits in perfectly. If you've got more candidates out there running as Democrats, right, you're going to have more people involved and understanding, oh, there are Democrats. Oh, they're. I was at a meeting once in, Alex, where were we at? Was it in Pine Top or Payson? It was in Payson. And there was a bunch of Democrats there and everybody was just looking around like, who are all these people? Like, you're all Democrats. Yes, there's Democrats here. And I know that's what it feels like sometimes, but think about it. We've got, Democrats in the top 3 seats in the state, right? We've got we've got one Democrat in the US Senate.
Yes, right.
Comments. About to have another one. No room going there. And we aren't looking too bad in like our major population centers, like Maricopa County is really turning. We might end up with 2 or 3 seats on the Board of Supervisors this time around. We may pick up a couple of the countywide offices there, but that's not just happening there. It's happening up here too. And people are sick and damn tired of the shenanigans on the far right of the Republican Party. Not all Republicans are voting straight down the ballot anymore.
Really?
I mean, look at my race, right? Mark Kelly only got a few thousand more votes statewide than I did, right? And so you're looking at these races and you're looking at, wow, there's a lot of people coming over and we got a lot of Republican support. I mean, especially when you see that the number of Democrats who voted was less than the number, certainly far less than the number of Republicans who voted. And the number of independents or non-party designated who voted was just slightly less than the Democrats. So when you look at the math, we had to have a bunch of Republicans voting for us. And you look at the precincts and the spaces, we outperformed in just about every precinct in the northeastern part of Maricopa County, Scottsdale, North Scottsdale, Paradise Valley, a lot of those areas, because the Chamber of Commerce Republicans, those folks who are invested literally in the outcome of elections, in the way that our systems work, and the fact that we have a reasonable, rational government, those folks care. There's a lot of those folks up here. This whole district has to care about the environment from a congressional district point of view. And we got serious problems there. And Crane's not going to do diddly about that. Right? He's going to stick with this, like Freedom Caucus Jr., because I don't think they'll let him in the regular caucus. Caucus Jr. Yeah, he's at the kids' table still. So I think what we need to really do is, I just distracted myself with my son. Okay. So there's space. There's still a little bit of time, but y'all got to get on it. And we gotta run for these offices, folks. And I'm not, aware enough of the community and the folks here to be able to say, you run for treasurer and you run for sheriff and you run for this. And I'm not the Oprah Winfrey of candidate creation, but I will tell you again, you create more candidates, you create more buzz, you create more action. That action is going to translate into votes. And those votes are going to matter. Over here and then over here. Yeah.
Yeah, I do have a question, but I wanted to say, if you want to run for office or volunteer for those running for office, come tell me your name and I'll write it down and you can volunteer. But an actual question. So I lived in Maricopa County when you were a reporter, and I loved what you did with the text and email notifications.
Yeah.
Is that possible for Secretary of State? Like, do you have the funding? Is that gonna happen?
Not only is it possible, it's coming. But we're not making any public announcements from the office yet because we've got to deal with 13 different systems that we support across the state. But we already have the technology. We have it's like the $6 million man, right? We have the tools and the technology. We can rebuild this thing and we can do it. And we will. We made it happen in Maricopa. When I was a chief deputy, we made it happen in Pima County down there for a little bit. So we're going to do it statewide. It is coming. We should have it up for 2024. I'll get to you in 1 second back there. Yes, sir.
Did you have a public information officer? Because much of the information you've given us today would be really helpful for the public in general to know about what kind of election integrity you are working on with the manual and all that other stuff. If that could be published once a month as a newsletter or something, I think it would help. That's point number one. Point number two is I want to take a little issue with your thought about faith and confidence in the system. I think there are a lot of independents out there who have been hammered for 2 years or longer about election denialism. And then some of them may not be election denialists, but they may be election skeptics. And I wonder if there isn't a group of election skeptics out there who can be convinced that enough is being done in Arizona, have confidence in the elections. That doesn't mean that we ignore the people who have the good faith, but if we're going to change the direction of Arizona, I think we need to be focusing on the independents who are at least reasonable enough to listen to what you have to say and what you are doing to assure the integrity of the elections.
So both of those things fit together, right? Public information officer, public information, right? That both of those things work together. I would say yes to everything that you've said. I'm not a skeptic because I know better. I know the systems, right? I think that it's not the faith in the systems that is the big problem. It's the loss of faith that we have in one another. That's the much bigger, that's the macro problem, okay? They couch it in, oh, the system is corrupt, but what they're saying is this lady who works in the polling place is corrupt, and this lady in the warehouse is corrupt, and this lady who's doing the audit on this thing is corrupt, and her certification was bad. They're trying to divide us from one another by us losing faith in each other as Americans is what I was trying to get at. And that by couching it in the system, they don't make it personal because they have a much higher hill to climb if they're saying you can't trust each other. See what I'm saying? So it's kind of like they're getting to that, but they're not quite saying it. Right? They're letting us come to that conclusion. We can't trust anybody that works in the government. We can't trust anybody that works in any institution. And once you destroy all the institutions, then the strong man comes in, and that's what the authoritarian blueprint is all about. I mean, they're not. This is pretty plain in front of us. So yes, those folks can be reached. And how do we reach them? Not just from our position officially with the information, but we reach them through these campaigns. We go and we do the door knocking and we get better candidates so that perhaps we have more wins. And then once we get better people in government, we can adjust the systems appropriately, right? So it kind of all feeds on to itself. But I definitely do appreciate the thing out here, and we got one or two.
We have an audience on Zoom, and they have a couple of questions too. And anybody also that has questions for Emily Levy, please ask those as well.
Okay, let's do, yeah.
I'm not sure if this was asked and answered already, but how do you find out in advance what seats are currently unposed?
I gotcha.
Yeah, talk to Lama. She knows all that stuff. Yes, that's your organizer. That's your key to the kingdom. That's the person who will tell you what you got to do, when you got to start petitions, what they look like, how you qualify, blah, blah, blah. And if she doesn't have the answer, then nobody will. Okay, Alan, how we get to the folks online?
Okay, Toby, do you want to read out some of the questions
Okay.
from the
Okay, Toby will read them.
Think you're gonna run for governor in 8 years.
Do I think I'm gonna run for governor in 8 years? Oh, I'd love to have won the lottery by then. Yeah, it was like $1 billion the other day, wasn't it? Oh, man, I missed that one. You like how I evaded that question? Right, and I did it with a smile and you laughed and you're like, that's awesome. Hey, that's political talent right there. Another one.
We have one for Emily before another one for you.
Okay, Emily.
This is Diane Christensen. Welcome to Sedona. How are you? Thank you for coming in, and I just wanted to give you an opportunity to respond to what you've heard so far and to ask you next steps that you think that we should be doing here from Sedona around voting issues.
Can't hear you.
Emily, you're muted.
I don't think she is.
Thank you. Thank you, Diana. And hi, it's great to hear your voice. Diana is someone I knew before she lived in Sedona. So, so I wanted to say that Secretary Fontes, your point is well taken about skepticism and talking about concerns in a way that doesn't show a lot of trust for the election system. And I think it's a really tricky thing. And we've been told for years, Democratic Party has taken the stance for decades that if people knew about the problems with the security of our elections, that they wouldn't vote. And I think that we really saw in 2020 that even though there were a lot of concerns about election security, some, to my mind, justified and some unjustified. We had the greatest turnout we'd had for a presidential election. So I think it's really important that people have the truth and that we provide as many safeguards to the system as we can, which I think that you did a tremendous job of as county recorder in Maricopa County. And when I interviewed you for the Scrutineers podcast a few years ago, we talked about those protections. And I would love it if you would talk a little bit about some of the things that you introduced there. Because we can't simply trust the computers. And I stand by that statement. There are things that we can do, like the kinds of public oversight I was talking about before, like having really robust audits to check on the machine results, and also checking, posting the ballot images online is another check on the system. And I think those are all really important. One of the reasons scrutineers exist is to help people figure out what they can do individually. I know that these problems seem really big and it's hard to think of what can a few people do. And I think Secretary Fontes and I both spoke about the importance of observing the processing and counting of votes, that's really an important thing to do. And learning about what the situation is with election security and teaching other people about it, reaching out to folks. I know I've had people say to me, what can I do where I live? Everybody thinks like me, so there's no point in activism because everybody's already convinced. And I've heard other people say, there's no point in doing any activism because where I live, nobody agrees with me. And the tactics may be different in different places, but there's always things you can do in order to help. This is one of the things that we love to do in Scrutineers is help individuals figure out what's the most important role that they can play, and also groups and communities. So I hope that answered your question, Diana. I actually have a question for Secretary Fontes, which is, when you talked about the people, not only the equipment being certified, but the people being certified, does that include elected officials who are running elections? And if it does, what happens if they are, shall we say, not certifiable?
Well, there's plenty of elected officials who are certifiable without question. Yeah, the certified election officer designation goes to county recorders who have to attend the same courses everybody else does. It goes to election directors. It goes to early voting folks. It goes to voter registration folks. It goes to people across the entire state. And every 2 years, in the fall of the odd numbered years, so this one's coming up, there is a recertification that everybody has to take, regardless of where they are, who they are. All the electeds have to do it as well. And we try to make the courses as fun as possible. So it's not just lecturing, and we're using asymmetrical courses now, not just butts and seats for 5 days, but 3 days of butts and seats, and then 2 days of online with a lot of the more technical stuff so that folks can go back to those lessons. We've engaged a new learning management system so that you can track where you are in your courses and then go back to the lectures that you want to go back to and revisit some of these things. So we've really made more robust a training that was already in pretty good shape, capitalizing on the experience that not only we have in-house, but we use a lot of folks from out in the field to teach a lot of these courses. I was up in Flagstaff taking one of my in-person days of courses. Scott Jarrett from Maricopa County was teaching. I was in Phoenix to take one of my first day of the 3 in-person classes. And I'm the only person who's not, who's exempt from taking the classes because I do the certifying, right? It's my certification, so I don't have to take the classes, but I'm taking them anyway because there's always something new to learn, right? And so this is the coursework that they go through, and it covers everything, soup to nuts. We do stuff on postage stuff, on the mail processing with your local post offices and postmasters. We do stuff on budgeting. We do stuff on communicating with your voters and messaging. We do a lot of security stuff. And, you know, when you talk about election security, you're not just talking about, well, we don't just talk about systems. We talk about places. We talk about people. We talk about internal and external threats. We talk about North Korea and Russia and, Iran, because they're always poking at us. So we've got a whole slew of things. Not just is this particular system giving us the right results. And I will piggyback on my own answer here and say, yes, robust audits are necessary. And in Arizona, we have a mandatory hand count audit that is run by the political parties. It's not run by the folks who do the elections. The county chair will appoint people to go in, and from the parties, you'll have the election official in the room coaching, and the partisans themselves will do the actual hand count audits. It's a small, statistically significant set of ballots, but that is already mandatory in Arizona. So some people want to do like risk limiting audits and other kinds of, there's all kinds of different audits, but we already do have a pretty significant auditing scheme here in Arizona. And I'm getting the high sign from Alex, so I might only have 1 or 2 more questions. So we'll go here and then here. Yeah.
Thank you. I want to change the subject.
Okay.
Let's talk about the no labels party.
Yeah.
Oh, yay.
Alex won't get you out now.
What about them?
Well, you're being sued by the Democratic Party, right?
Yes, I am being sued by the Democratic. Well, here's the thing. I can't talk about the lawsuit because it's pending litigation.
Right.
But here's the thing. The Democratic Party is suing my office in its official capacity because we certified no labels, right? Now, to talk about that would be to talk about the case, and so I can't do that. But the fact that they're suing this office, think about that, to keep the other party off the board. I don't think it's good. No, I think we should take those resources and get out there and register more Democrats and run more candidates and actually win the popular vote. That's easy. And the Democratic Party chair is a dear friend of mine. We sang in mariachi together, she and I. She's phenomenal, and I absolutely disagree. It's as if we are Democrats running away from the no labels party instead of punching at them as hard as we can and winning the popular hearts and minds so that we can win elections. All of this energy is going into process, and that's fine. But what about people? What about our neighbors? What about getting out there and reaching those independents, right? Getting out there and talking to people about how extremism is bad for business. And what is no labels? It's a front for extremism as far as anybody can tell, right? And again, I'm not commenting on the lawsuit, but Yeah, so that's what I think about no labels. And then one last one, and then Alex is jumping up and down back there. I'm sorry, you guys. I have, that's his only job is to grab me and haul me out of it. And it's so great talking to you all. Yeah, Marianne.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for your enthusiasm. I'd like to get back to the ballot images for just a minute.
Sure.
A major concern that many people have is the release is timed before certification.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, why can't we have the professionals, the observers, everything done well, done correctly, and then release? Because otherwise we're gonna see, oh, there's bamboo in the images, there's creases, there's the circle's too perfect, the circle's not perfect enough. Why release these before certification? Why not wait until after?
Why wait?
Because of those very.
I'm not afraid of that fight. I believe in my systems. I believe in the people in this state that do it. I don't think releasing the images at any time earlier or later or earlier than certification. So and I hear this argument a lot, and respectfully, that becomes the tail wagging the dog. If we've got a good system like we say we do, which I think we do, and we've got solid professionals doing it, which I think we do, why not just release them?
A lot of lawsuits.
Great. They're all gonna lose. They've all lost so far. We'll have our certified results. And again, this is running away from the problem instead of hitting it head on and saying, we believe in our systems, we believe in our people, we believe in the process in election administration in Arizona, which I do obviously with a little bit of passion. And I'm a little biased because it's my work and my team's work that is on the line here and being called into question. I don't have any issues. Release all the images, put all of that stuff out there. Let them do their thing. Let them waste their money and spin their wheels. And over time, they will see the exact same results that they've seen so far in court case after court case. And the court of public opinion is turning against them. The court of public opinion is turning against them. I point you to November of 2022 as Exhibit A. They lost Arizona. Heat, red, Joe Arpaio, John McCain, Barry Goldwater, Arizona. For the first time in how many forevers has a Democrat in the governor's office, the secretary's office, and the attorney general's office. By the way, the first time ever, all born in Arizona, which I think is very nice. Yeah. So I'm not going to shy away from that fight. I am not going to shy away from that fight and be worried about some lawsuit is going to stop me from what I believe to be a solid system, what has proven to be a solid system. Respectfully, no, that's not the attitude that I have. Not a terrible argument though, right? It's not a terrible argument. It's just not one that I agree with. Anyway, Ellen.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
We'll
You bet.
stay in touch.
And if you want to help me, go to electfontes.com and pitch in. Please, we need it because we're getting all over the country. Anyway, good talking.